welcome everybody for this panel. Our topic here today is technology in real estate as a service. Thanks to the House Monk, we are all getting together here. We have some fantastic folks that I have a privilege to be talking with today. I have a set of questions that I've prepared for all of us. Right before that, let us just walk through who we are and what we do. Very quickly with myself, I am CTO at Hamlet. What I've done so far in my career is I've built startups, early to mid-stage startups. And right now, what I've done in the past 1 year at Hamlet is to grow Hamlet from a co-living company into a living and lifestyle platform, which has a lot more offerings than what we've had before. I will also be having Shelley, Payal, as well as James introduce themselves. Let's start with Shelley.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Shelley Trong. I'm the managing partner for REaaS Australia. Basically, the background is I run a scale-up program and investment fund for scale-ups. That's mostly Series A beyond startup companies.
Next up would be Payal.
Hi, everyone. I am part of the Occupy Consulting Group at JLL India and closely involved with all the PropTech initiatives and technology solutions that we're providing primarily to the enterprise clients. So for me, a lot of my responses and bias would come from the office and the commercial space.
Cool. Thank you, Payal. And James?
Hey, Pramod, thank you for that. So by way of quick introduction, my name is James Dearsley. I'm the co-founder of Unisu. As a mission, we're there to connect and to educate the buyers and sellers of property technology all around the world. To put it simply, one of our clients once described us as the love child of Gartner, Google, and LinkedIn. Hopefully that gives some sense of everything that we do.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Then let's begin. The first one is actually for Payal. So Payal, you've worked at JLL India for some time. What are some of the technologies that you see on the rise lately in this industry?
And as McKinsey released a couple of years ago, about 50% of the jobs, not jobs, so to say, the tasks have been automated. That gives us room to really evolve in the kind of work we do, more of the cognitive tasks. But office, the workspace that we actually operate in, has trailing behind. It's trailing behind. It's not kept up with how we have evolved as employees. And that brings me to two spaces where we're seeing a lot of focus and attraction. First, naturally, is the tenant experience. There's been massive focus on how to retain, attract, and actually improve the experience that an employee goes through. And that may be right from the point, if they're coming in a car or a transportation or the transit, what is the commute like from home to office, entry into the office space, the entire 9 to 5 or 9 to 7 work day in India, and the commute back home. That is the entire journey that we look at, and that's seeing a major makeover and shift. And that's where a lot of focus is. I'll probably speak about that a little bit more in detail in terms of what specific technologies in all of them, but one that I want to speak right now is the space occupancy and optimization. A huge focus on companies realizing that what is the peak utilization, how are the employees actually interacting with the workspace, what are the touch points, what are the facilities and amenities that they really want to focus on, and so on and so forth. The second piece that I want to speak about that is gaining a lot of traction is sustainability and wellness. Sustainability in terms of right from building materials to energy efficiency, huge focus on that. And also what that enables is a win-win situation. If you do bring in energy efficiencies, it does reduce costs. And then you may choose as a developer or a landlord to pass on those benefits either to the tenant or retain them for yourselves. The second concept around wellness, and especially owing to the pandemic, has been there's been a focus on indoor air quality and ventilation. How do we improve the air, noise, smell that exists in a specific space or in a specific department that an employee works in, and so on and so forth. So according to me, those are two key areas where we're seeing major interest from companies.
James, the next question is for you. Dealing with businesses, what trends have you observed young businesses adopt lately?
Yeah, thanks for that. And rather than me necessarily just give a qualitative opinion, which we can all do as panelists on here, what I want to do is be able to back it all up with actual hard data in terms of what we're seeing in the market from what we would term as a prop tech company, but in reality, it's about innovating in the built environment. But I'm actually going to show two things, because what you just said there, Payal, I'm just going to back it up by what we've got in terms of procurement, right? So there's really what's happening in the industry in terms of what the industry is starting as small startups, raising funds, going into the changing business models. But then there's actually what the real estate market is looking for right now. And, this is just some available procurement projects that we've got on the platform, which is large real estate companies coming in here and saying, we need to solve this problem. And so we've got air quality challenges. We've got smart office solutions as to live projects. And if you just take a quick snapshot of some of the most recent projects, smart buildings and sensors for sustainability, pandemic prevention management tools, creation of digital twins as a sort of an outlier, data warehouse, people counting, temperature and movement monitoring, tenant satisfaction. It's all in exactly, Payal, what you said. So well done. I'm validating your argument, which I hate to do on a panel because I normally like to argue and say that's wrong, but you're right. It's all there. And you can keep coming. Energy consumption, it's all in there, right? So these are live projects which the real estate industry is looking for right now to say we need a technology solution to solve that problem. But let's go to exactly what you talked about. So I had our data warlord run some figures, and what you're looking at here is basically two pie charts which are really looking at when companies were set up in the last 10 years, so 2008 to 2018, and companies that have been set up in the last 2 years, just to sort of give a bit of a comparison in terms of the technologies that are being used in the sectors. And sort of working clockwise around the system, we've got data analytics as the absolute prevalent sort of market and technology in the last sort of 12 years or so. And what you're starting to see is big data was prevalent in the last couple of years, but not so much in the previous 10. So we're starting to see that becoming more and more important in terms of this data gathering exercise that obviously the real estate market is waking up to. And by the way, that runs in tandem with the growth in AI. So artificial intelligence is becoming more and more important in the real estate market, where we're seeing growth of companies from 6% of the market now to nearly 10% of the market. Whilst interestingly at the same time, we're seeing a shift back from the Internet of Things, which was very in fashion sort of in the last sort of decade, but all of a sudden it's starting to move backwards. So, that gives you an idea in terms of your exact question, Pramod, which is what technologies are being used in the industry. And there are sort of smaller niche industries which are getting a bit of traction. So I've had a little look at things like sensors, geospatial, geolocation, which you'll see very small increments of increase in the last couple of years as well, which all speaks to everything that we're sort of talking about today. But the other interesting angle for me on this is not necessarily the technologies, but actually where in the life cycle of the built environment they're placed. So if you start looking at the life cycle focus in the last 10 years, which has been predominantly on the manage phase, okay, so managing of buildings, all the way through that entire life cycle they've got has dropped significantly from a 40% prevalence within the technology startups to only a 28% prevalence. And what we've seen in the last couple of years is a serious uptake in terms of the transactional side of the market, where you can see the rent and lease phase of all these technologies have gone from 13% to 18%. And perhaps more importantly, the buy phase of the market has gone from a 15% of the market to nearly a quarter of all of the market around the technology startup. So I hope, rather than giving you a qualitative opinion, I've backed up Payal with fact, and we've got some quantitative figures that you can use as well.
No, that's fantastic. Okay, interesting. That's very interesting. The next question essentially would be for Payal and Shelley. We want to talk a little bit more about how you see tech being used to streamline operations in the real estate industry.
I'm happy to sort of jump in on that. Thanks for all the data sharing, James. I'm such a data geek, so that was a great sort of whirlwind for me. So I was just writing notes down. And for us, every year we look at a ton of deals. We've done 30 deals in the last year, and so we get a lot of this application data, and we talk to the real estate industry because our parent company is actually an association as part of the industry. So and that includes residential and commercial real estate. So a lot of the trends are very similar in the ways that what you guys are seeing in the data, in the back end of the data, we see in the applications, and what we talk to in terms of more ad hoc with the industries, what they're needing. So, you know, definitely there's certain region specifics though. Like for example, Asia and Asia Pac is very ESG focused. You know, one of the first things that I think is really important for any real estate groups wanting to streamline is that how does this impact, you know, my sustainability targets? You know, and so that's actually quite interesting for me because, you know, how I'm investing in my region, you know, Reach Australia, including APAC, is I'm actually very proactive about investing in smart cities companies. You know, being the first in, you know, 6 investments we made in December, half of those are actually in the smart cities space, which is actually very different from what the US cohort are doing. You know, ESG, you know, we're seeing technologies that really automate parking. You know, as soon as you come into the building, you know, you'll recognize, you get straight access. But also just with the COVID environment and contactless and distancing, we're actually seeing technologies thrive that can actually provide that journey. One of the companies we've invested in is Ubi Park, who's always, their technology has always been contactless, but because of COVID, they've actually been able to thrive and provide that sort of facilities management experience, if you like. But you know, handling population, another one we've made an investment in is PAM, and that's wayfinding. You know, they provide wayfinding within large precincts, and again, mirroring IoT, all that data, James, you pulled out around IoT, data analytics, you know, and using intelligence to drive that data. PAM is a really good example of another investment where it's focused on, you know, providing a seamless journey by looking at traffic when you need to go to the stadium for, you know, hopefully when live stadium events are back on board, you know, you're going to the stadium for the football and you need to get there very quickly, or going to work, you know, and trying to brace the traffic. So these are kind of the journeys we're looking at to get the person into the building safely. But also during an emergency, PAM can actually provide data analytics and communication so that they can direct you into a certain location in the phase of emergency. So we're looking at technology from, you know, the point of coming into the office all the way through to managing crisis situations now. So it's quite broad. And I think that growth area of IoT is very specific to Asia. You know, IoT, data analytics, intelligence deriving from that is going to be very, very big. On top of that, also aged care is going to start really becoming a big opportunity as well. Aged care, managing, you know, facilities in those sort of buildings, you know, getting those sort of disability services taken care of within buildings. I think that's also a fantastic ESG opportunity for us to be more socially aware about our buildings and how to manage people coming in and out of those very safely.
I was just going to say to Shelley, I love the fact that you've really subtly dissed the entire investment strategy of the US arm, that the Aussie arm is actually the one that knows what they're doing.
We're very region specific. You know, it's just different because look, you know, certain things are more important and not debated in this region, right? Like, i.e., whether or not climate change is actually happening. You know, I think that is certainly a reality for a lot of us. Like, Australia is known for building the most energy efficient buildings 8 years in a row. You know, and that's something that we as a region should be proud of. And we have the opportunity to really educate the rest of the world. You know, most of the pollution is caused by buildings. And so, I mean, that's why I'm in prop tech. I really see a contribution we can all make. But, you know,
I think if I can, the really interesting aspect of everything that you've mentioned there as well is about region specificity. And this is something which I think as a market, as a global industry, we have to understand. I mean, Shelley, you mentioned about smart parking. And I know the Aussie market is absolutely obsessed with smart parking, and yet I don't see that in very many other places. And so it's really interesting. You have this geographical specificity around sort of waves and troughs of technology that is being adopted by the industry. So
I'm reading the question that one of the users named Rhonda is asking. Apart from dollar access tech, it has not found much wide application in residential developments, as much as it has in commercial real estate or industrial. What should companies do to push adoption? Do you have any views on that?
I was simply going to
Great.
bring on the very fact of the biggest struggle that we have with technology adoption in the real estate industry, which is it's not really about the technology, it's actually about the mentality. And so with commercial buildings and occupiers and landlords and owners, they have now found elements of a need for things like sensors within buildings, because they have to manage their occupiers within them and actually give them feedback. And I think there is now a use case within the commercial sector. I think with the resi sector, it's a slightly different market because it's a more emotive market. It's more of a B2C market in some senses, and the residential developers are much more behind in terms of their adoption of technology, because in essence, all they are generally doing is they're building and they're selling, and then they move on. They still haven't quite grasped the concept of build, hold, and therefore they haven't quite grasped the concept of build, hold, and understand the mechanics of the building and understand how it's all working brilliantly. And so, sensor adoption hasn't really grasped much of a stranglehold around that market yet. So it's going to take a lot more time and a lot more education within the residential sector around the world to sort of adopt that. So,
Payal, do you have any thoughts on the original and then this one as well?
Oh, yeah, I'll go ahead with both. To the original question, actually, I completely agree with Shelley in terms of like the facilities and the building management. And again, one point I definitely want to resonate with that's being discussed on this group is very different markets. Sometimes people just fail to understand how an emerging versus a developed, and very often we loosely use the term Asia Pacific. It's a mammoth of its own, and Australia works very differently from Singapore to Hong Kong to India. The people, the culture, everything is so diverse. So when someone slaps on a technology and thinks that, oh, Asia Pac is going to pick it up, no, like it has to be done at a more local level for you to understand how we culturally work and go through the entire experience. So thank you for bringing that up, Shelley. I think it's such an important point that everyone needs to pay attention to when they're developing technologies. It's not one size fits all. We're very different markets. And with respect to facilities and building management, JLL often refers to the rule of 330-300 principle. We say about $3 is spent on utilities, about on average $30 is spent on utilities, on rent, and $300 is spent on your payroll. That's like a generic rule of thumb that we use in terms of cost optimization for companies. The focus really has to go on the $300, which is your HR and your payroll, right? Which is making sure that the employees have a really productive experience while they're in the office space. I think one thing that's coming to the forefront quite a bit is while we all very aggressively and excitedly adopted to the open plan office spaces, we forgot to take into account aspects that within an office space, again, we all work very differently, where we each have a unique style. And I genuinely feel one thing that the pandemic has done has made us realize what a unique style is. Again, I think that office, just the walls, what tend to do is, again, one size fits all. The desks kind of look the same, collapse space is kind of the same. But I may be a worker that likes working around a bunch of people, but in a quiet zone, not necessarily when everyone's talking from working on focused work, versus someone else might actually thrive in the chaos. The constant chatter helps you work better. Offices need to start like adjusting to that, and facilities management and sensor tracking will help us get there a little bit. So I feel the pandemic helped us because that was an interesting conversation I was having with people across the world, and they all have identified what the unique style of working is. And that's why maybe to some extent, we think we're more productive at home, sorry. So with respect to facilities management, I think, again, one of the most exciting technologies that I'm looking forward to is the voice assistant that JLL is developing. So JLLT Technologies, the technology arm that we have, it's surprising how voice assistant actually came into our personal lives before our work lives, which are a lot more hectic to manage. So that's something I'm super excited about. It's called JLL, and it's going to be a voice assistant that helps you in the workspace. With respect to general building and facilities management, there are a bunch of portals. We have our own portal that's called Modo, which just tracks every specific element, be it your building energy, building efficiencies, employees, sensor tracking, ventilation systems, and it all feeds into this one portal that gives you a dashboard to understand what is the health index of your office space or your building. So those are my thoughts with respect to streamlining operations in a big way. With respect to the next question that we were discussing was IoT in the residential space. Again, like I said, I find it very surprising that voice assistants actually made their way into our personal lives before business lives, because we are so protective about our privacy. And if a company says that we're not collecting data, we're like, okay, fine. We won't read into where we're not reading the terms, but it's just, we believe you when you say you're not collecting data. But maybe that's a challenge with respect to the residential space, is you're in my personal space where I'm spending like time with family, or unlike the office space, which is just I'm going into one specific office, which is my workplace, doing my work and getting out, and I'm doing it for the company. So if the company is collecting data, sure, because I'm working for them. So I feel that might be a challenge, but we're definitely moving, breaking those barriers and moving in the right direction, even in the residential space. An interesting company that I want to mention is Hello Alfred, which is in the US. And I think they're doing some very interesting things by providing concierge-style services in the residential space, in your home space. Those are a few of my thoughts.
Thank you. Thanks, Payal. This is from Pratik. My question would be for Payal. What technologies augment JLL to manage their vendors' performance, facility, security, operations, and maintenance, while at the same time ensure SLAs are adhered real time? You're on mute at this point. This meme that's been going around the internet, it finally happened here as well.
I'm so sorry. In continuation to what we're just speaking about with building and facilities management, JLL has an intelligent maintenance system. So in some capacity, it's not only helping real-time tracking of facilities and service vendors across all the platforms, but it also helps with predictive analytics. So let me give you an example. Typically, we would make like a manual entry saying every quarter something needs to be looked at and equipment needs to be like serviced or looked at. Instead of trying to recollect or remember that, it's just going to be more predictive based on the performance of the equipment. Essentially, just like the battery life notification on your phone. It's not necessarily you have to charge it every X number of hours. It will tell you when it's low on battery. Please have a look at it and charge your phone. It's as simple as that. So we have our own systems which help you do that. And again, like I mentioned earlier, Modo, which is our portal, helps all the apps and services feed into the data warehouse, which does a brilliant job of giving you with the analytics and insights needed as a facilities manager or a building manager to then action on the items that require your attention or don't require attention.